Welcome to the Behind Closed Doors channel. Wishing you a peaceful day. Today, I'd like to share the following story with you. I hope you enjoy listening to my story. Now, please.
My mother only said one sentence, and my sister's wedding was called off. 3 seconds. That's all it takes for a wedding to fall apart. I stood in the corner of the reception hall, holding a glass of untouched orange juice, watching Lynn walk out the door without looking back, her white wedding dress dragged across the patterned tile floor. The music was still playing. The band hadn't even realized what had happened yet. Kai stood in the middle of the hall, still holding the ring he hadn't managed to put on her finger. My mother stood beside the microphone, her lips just closing after saying those words. The words I would remember for the rest of my life. But to understand why those 3 seconds happened, I have to start from the beginning. 30 years earlier, when my mother was still a different person. There are 3 women in my family. My grandmother, everyone called her Aunt Sao, passed away when I was 8. I only remember the smell of betel leaves and her wrinkled hands gently patting my head every morning. I don't remember her voice. I don't remember her face clearly. I only remember the warmth. My mother, Mrs. Hua, is 58 this year. Straight posture, neatly tied hair, embroidered aojai on important occasions. She was a literature teacher before retiring. All her life, she spoke in beautiful sentences, every word carefully chosen, every phrase intentional. That's what made her words that day hurt even more. Lynn, my older sister, is 32, 6 years older than me. She's an architect, the person I admire most in the world. Not because she's talented, not because she's beautiful, but because she's the only person in the family who dares to tell Mom the truth. Or at least I thought she was. And me, Lan, 26 years old, working in a small media company, freelancing on weekends, single, and constantly oversleeping every Monday morning. I'm the one who witnessed everything. 3 months before the wedding, Kai brought home for the first time. He's a doctor, tall, not handsome in a magazine cover way, but he has eyes that look directly at you when he speaks, the kind of eyes you trust from the first meeting. That evening at dinner, he called my mother Auntie and poured water for her before sitting down. Mom smiled. I finally relaxed. But right in the middle of the meal, when Kai stepped into the bathroom, my mother leaned down and quietly asked Lynn, "What does his father do?" Lynn put down her chopsticks. "Why are you asking?" "What's wrong with asking?" "His father passed away, Mom, when he was 15. Mom silenced for a second. "And his mother?" "She lives in Binjiang, small business owner." Mom nodded, said nothing else. But I noticed the way she picked up her chopsticks again. Her grip tightened slightly, her lips pressed together a little harder. I knew she was calculating something. I just didn't know what. When I was 18, I accidentally found a diary in my mother's desk drawer. I wasn't trying to snoop. I was looking for scissors, but the diary opened and I read one line before I could stop myself. "He came again today. This time I didn't run out like I always did. I stood behind the door and watched him leave. I think I finally understood that sometimes you love someone by letting them go." I closed the diary immediately. I never asked Mum about those words, but I never forgot them. My mother married my father when she was 23. He was a construction engineer. He died when I was 12 in a worksite accident. Since then, Mum raised the two of us alone on a teacher's salary and my father's insurance money. People often call my mother a strong woman. I think differently. I think she's a woman who learned how to turn pain into discipline, fear into control, love into silent rules the entire family had to follow. Every night before bed, Mum sat by my father's portrait and talked to him. I used to eavesdrop outside the door. She often whispered, "Did I do the right thing?" But my father could never answer, so my mother had to answer herself. 2 months before the wedding, Lynn called me at 11 at night. Her voice sounded strange, not exactly crying, but like someone holding something in for far too long. "Lan, can you come out?" I met her at the 24-hour cafe near her apartment. She sat in the corner, holding a cold cup of coffee with both hands. "What happened?" She looked at me. "Has Mum said anything to you?" "No." "Why?" She sighed. "Mum met Kai yesterday, alone, without me." I sat up straighter. "For what?" She said, "I don't know. Kai won't tell me. He just said Mum wanted to talk privately about family matters." "What family matters?" He said Mum asked about his grandmother. I frowned. "His grandmother? What about her?" Lynn stared out the window. "She's got Alzheimer's, mid-stage, living with her mother in Binjiang." I understood immediately, but I didn't dare say it out loud, because if I did, it would become real. "Mum's worried you'll end up taking care of his grandmother," I whispered. Lynn looked at me, didn't confirm it, didn't deny it. "I'm afraid that's not the only thing she's scared of." I got home at 1 in the morning. The house was dark. Mum was asleep. I stood outside her bedroom door for a long time. I wanted to knock, wanted to ask, but I didn't. I went into my room, lay down, stared at the ceiling in the dark, and for the first time in my life, I felt like our family was standing on something very thin, like the last layer of ice at the end of winter. One wrong step.
1 month before the wedding, I was writing in my room when the doorbell rang. Mum was cooking and went to answer it. I heard a stranger's voice, a middle-aged man, speaking softly. Curious, I stepped out. The man standing outside was around 55 or 56, light blue shirt, silver streaks in his hair, holding a box of pastries. I looked at his face and realized something strange. My mother was trembling. My mother, the woman who never trembled, was trembling. What do you need?" Her voice sounded hoarse. "I just wanted—" The man noticed me and stopped. "Sorry, I didn't realize you had company." "This is my daughter," Mum said quickly, too quickly. "Lan, go back to your room." I did, but I didn't close the door completely. I heard fragments of quiet voices. "You shouldn't have come. I just wanted to say it once. You know that's impossible. Your daughter is grown up now, Hua." Then silence. The front door closing. Mum's footsteps back into the kitchen. The rice pot placed down harder than usual. That night at dinner, Mum never mentioned the man. Neither did I. But from that day on, I started paying attention, and I realized I had missed many things during 26 years of living with my mother. 3 weeks before the wedding, my mother organized an official dinner for both families to meet. Kai's side was 3, his mother, Mrs. Twett, and 2 aunts. His father had passed away, just as Lynn had said. I arrived early to help set the table. Mum was in the kitchen, wearing a floral apron, slicing cucumbers, every slice perfectly even, thin and neat. "Did you wash your face? Is your hair tidy?" she asked without looking up. "Yes, Mum." "That shirt looks old. Why didn't you wear the one from Lunar New Year?" "I'm 26. "So?" I didn't answer. We'd had this conversation 100 times. Mrs. Twett arrived at 5:30. Petite woman, curled hair, striped blouse. She looked like someone who worked at a market store and had just been taken shopping for new clothes by her children. In a non-negative way, in the sense that she wasn't trying to become someone else. Mum greeted her at the door. They bowed politely. "Mrs. Hua, I've been nervous all week," Mrs. Twett said in her soft Bin's-Young accent. "I hope I'm not bothering you." "Of course not. This is a happy occasion," Mum smiled. The smile looked normal, if you didn't know my mother. But I did, and I saw that the smile never reached her eyes. The dinner went smoothly for the first 45 minutes. Kai talked about work at the hospital. His mother talked about the fabric stall she managed. The aunts asked Lynn about the apartment she was designing. Mum sat at the head of the table, smiling, serving food, asking questions. I stayed quiet and ate and observed. Then Mrs. Twett said something completely innocent. "I'm really happy for Kai too. He had a hard life growing up, Mrs. Hua. After his father passed, I raised 3 children alone. But Kai loves his mother deeply. Now that he's getting married, all I want is for the 2 of them to be happy. As for his grandmother, I can handle that myself. You don't need to worry." Mum put down her chopsticks. "Your grandmother, how is she now?" Mrs. Twett paused slightly. "She's the same, honestly. Alzheimer's disease. Some days she remembers, some days she forgets. On good days she still recognizes me. On bad days she calls me Hung. That was her sister-in-law's name." "She lives with you?" "Yes. I hire someone to watch her during the day. At night I take care of her." Mum nodded, staring down at her rice bowl. "You worry a lot," she said softly, "because later, when the 2 of them have children, things become more complicated." Mrs. Twett gave an awkward smile. "Yes, but I'll handle it. I'm not expecting help or anything." "I'm not talking about help," Mum said, her voice staying calm. "I'm talking about reality." The table fell silent. Lynn picked up her chopsticks, then put them down again. Kai looked at my mother. "Auntie," he said, "I understand you're worried about Lynn, but I want you to know I'll take care of my family. My grandmother is my responsibility and my mother's responsibility. I would never let Lynn—" "You can say that now," Mum interrupted him gently, still smiling. "But life doesn't always follow what people say." The dinner ended around 8. Mrs. Twett and the aunts left first. Kai stayed another 15 minutes before leaving too. Before he left, he stopped at the door and looked at my mother. "Auntie, I really love Lynn." Mum looked at him. "I know. I want you to trust me. We'll see." Kai left. Lynn closed the door and turned toward Mum. "Mum, what? You can't do that." "Do what?" "You made Kai feel like he has to prove himself." Mum walked into the kitchen. "That's his job."
That night, I couldn't sleep. At 3 in the morning, I went downstairs for water. Mum was sitting alone at the dining table. In front of her was a cold cup of tea and an old family photo album. I stopped at the kitchen doorway. Mum looked up. "What are you doing up?" "Getting water." I poured myself some water, but instead of going back upstairs, I pulled out a chair and sat across from her. Mum stared at me for a moment before looking back down at the album. Can't sleep? No. Silence. Mum, I began softly. Don't. I haven't said anything yet. I know what you're about to say. She still stared at the album, and I don't want to hear it tonight. I looked at her hands, her fingers lightly rubbing the edge of a photograph inside. A picture of Dad when he was young, long hair, bright smile. You're afraid Lynn will suffer, I said quietly. Mum stayed silent. You're afraid history will repeat itself. She closed the album. What do you know about history? I know Dad died when I was 12. I know you raised us alone. I know it wasn't easy. So you're scared Lynn will have to carry everything alone too? Mum didn't answer immediately. She sat still for a very long time. Then she spoke so softly I had to lean forward to hear. Back then, before I married your father, I loved someone else. I froze completely, afraid that if I moved, she'd stop talking. I was 20. He was 23. We were together for 3 years. He wasn't a bad person. He was very kind, but his family was complicated. His grandmother hated me. She said I wasn't good enough for his son, said my family was poor, said I knew nothing. What happened? I left. You left him? Not exactly. I stepped away. I didn't want to spend my life in a family where I wasn't welcomed. I didn't want to marry someone if being with him meant enduring his relatives forever. I looked at her. Do you regret it? Mum stayed silent so long I thought she wouldn't answer. Not regret exactly. I just sometimes wonder what would have happened if I had been more patient. The man who came to the house the other day, was that him? Mum looked at me, didn't confirm it, didn't deny it. She simply stood up, picked up her cold tea, and walked away. The next morning I called Lynn. Mum told me about her past last night. What about? I told her everything. Every detail. Lynn stayed silent until I finished. I think Mum is projecting herself onto you, I said. She's afraid you'll repeat her story, complicated family, unwelcoming relatives. But Kai's family isn't like that. His mother is kind. Didn't you see Mrs. Touette yesterday? She really... Lynn, I interrupted gently. The problem isn't whether Mrs. Touette is kind or not. The problem is that Mum is seeing Kai through the lens of her own past. Lynn went quiet. I need you to understand this before the wedding, so you and Kai can prepare yourselves. For what? I don't know. I just know Mum is carrying something inside her, and she hasn't let it go.
5 days before the wedding, Kai came to our house in the afternoon while Ling was still at work. He stood at the doorway holding an envelope. I want to speak with your mother, he told me. She's in the kitchen. He nodded and stepped inside. I followed behind him, pretending to search for something in a cabinet. Auntie, Kai said, I'd like to talk to you privately. Mom wiped her hands on her apron and looked up. Sit down. They sat at the dining table. I pressed my ear against the wall in the next room. "I've brought this for you." I heard the envelope land on the table. "What is it?" "My financial records, bank accounts, insurance papers, apartment documents. I want you to know Ling will never have to worry financially." Silence. "And this, more papers. These are documents related to my grandmother. I hired a full-time caregiver. She'll continue living in Binzyeong with my mother and the helper. Ling won't need to take care of her directly unless she wants to." This time, Mom stayed silent even longer. "Kai," she finally said, her voice softer than I expected, "I know you're not Doubt. I know you're a good person. But life isn't just paperwork. Paperwork changes, circumstances change, people change too." "I understand, Auntie. Do you know why I'm worried?" "I'm not sure." A chair scraped across the floor. Mom stood up and walked to the window. "It's not about you. It's not about your family. I'm worried about Ling. Ling is strong, Auntie. You think you know how strong she is." Mom's voice stayed calm, but something sharp hid underneath. "Since her father died, she's carried so much. She helped me more than anyone. She never says it, but I know. She worries for everyone else and forgets herself." "I know, and I will. You'll love her. I believe that. But love isn't enough. I loved my husband too. He still died, and I still had to carry everything alone." At that moment, my chest tightened. Not because she was wrong, but because she was saying something true in the wrong way. To be continued. "Kai," Mom continued, "I know you mean what you say, but I've lived long enough to know that promises are easy when life is calm." Kai didn't answer immediately. Then, quietly, "I can't promise that nothing bad will ever happen. Nobody can. But I can promise that if something does happen, Ling won't face it alone." Mom stood still by the window. Finally, she said, "I know you're sincere. I'm just afraid." "You can be afraid," Kai replied gently. "I'll keep trying until you don't have to be." After he left, Mom stayed sitting alone in the kitchen. I walked in. She looked up at me. "You heard everything, didn't you?" "Yes." She sighed. "Mom," I sat down across from her, "I want to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly." "What?" "Do you actually want Ling to marry Kai?" Mom was silent for a very long time. "I want Ling to be happy. That's not an answer." She looked at me. "I want Ling to be happy. I'm just not sure what happiness looks like."
3 days before the wedding, Lin called me. "Are you busy?" "No. What's wrong?" "Can you come out? Same cafe." When I arrived, Lin was already there. This time she was crying. Not heavily, just red eyes. But it was the first time I'd seen her cry since Dad died. "What happened?" She slid her phone across the table. "Read this." I looked down. A text message from an unknown number. "Hi Lin, this is Thang, Kai's younger sister. I want to tell you something before the wedding, not to ruin anything, but because I think you deserve the truth. Kai used to have another girlfriend named Ni. They broke up 3 years ago because Kai never introduced her to his mother. He was afraid his mum wouldn't approve. Ni waited 2 years and eventually left him. After that, he met you. I just think you should know. Kai is a good person, but he's not perfect."
I finished reading and looked up. Did you ask Kai about it? Yes. What did he say? He said it's true. He had an ex named Ni. They broke up because he wasn't ready to bring her home. He said it's the biggest regret of his life. What do you think? Lynn stared down on her engagement ring glimmering under the cafe lights. You know what feels strangest to me? What? It wasn't Kai who told me, not his mother, his younger sister, a girl who's never even met me. Maybe Thang just thought you deserved to know. No, Lynn looked directly into my eyes. Someone asked her to send that message. I went still. Who? Even though I already feared the answer. Lynn didn't say anything, and I didn't ask again. That night I went home and knocked on Mum's bedroom door. Come in. She was sitting in bed reading, glasses low on her nose. Mum, I need to talk to you. What is it? I shut the door behind me. Did you contact Kai's sister? Mum slowly closed her book. Why are you asking? Please answer me. She looked at me for a long moment. I called Thang. I wanted to know about Kai from a family member's perspective. Did you ask her to text Lynn about Kai's ex-girlfriend? Mum stayed silent. Mum, my voice started shaking. That was private. You had no right. I have the right to know who my daughter is marrying. You do not have the right to interfere like that. I was protecting my child. You're destroying your child's happiness. My voice came out louder than I intended. Mum stood up. You don't understand. No, Mum, I understand too well. I understand that you're scared, but your fear doesn't give you permission to do this. She stared at me. There was something in her eyes I couldn't fully read. Not anger, not regret, something in between. You think I'm wrong? Yes, I whispered. I think you're wrong. I see. She picked up her book again. When you have children of your own, maybe then you'll understand. I walked out and shut the door behind me, standing alone in the hallway, hands trembling. Not because I was angry, but because I had realized a terrifying thing. My mother knew she was wrong, and she still couldn't stop herself. Not because she was cruel, but because in her world she truly believed she was doing the right thing. And that was the scariest part.
2 days before the wedding. 2 in the morning. My phone vibrated. Unknown number. Hello? Are you Lan? Ling's younger sister? A woman's voice, hoarse like she'd been crying. Yes, who is this? My name is Ni, Kai's ex-girlfriend. I sat upright in the dark. How did you get my number? Thang gave it to me. She told me Ling was affected by what happened. I wanted to explain things properly. What do you want to say? Kai and I broke up because I chose to leave, not because he was a bad person. He was just afraid. Afraid his mother wouldn't approve. Afraid he wouldn't be strong enough if his family opposed us. I understood that, but I didn't have enough patience to wait for him to grow up. And now? I look at him now and I can see he's changed. He's not someone who runs away anymore. He faces things now. Your sister met the better version of him. I didn't know what to say. I called because I don't want Ling doubting him because of me. I don't resent him. I want him to be happy, and I think your sister is good for him. Do you know someone asked Thang to send that message? Silence. Yes, Ni said quietly. Thang told me. What do you think about it? I think that person is afraid in their own way. She hesitated. Not malicious, but harmful. Yes, I whispered. Harmful.
After the call, I lay back down, staring at the ceiling in the dark, thinking about my mother, thinking about a woman standing behind a door, watching the man she loved walk away, convincing herself it was the right thing to do, thinking about the cost of protection, and wondering, can you love someone so much that you end up hurting them? Wedding day. 6 in the morning. Ling's apartment had been noisy since 5. Hairstylists, makeup artists, friends running in and out, laughter, soft music, the smell of hairspray and perfume. Ling sat in front of the mirror while the makeup artist worked on her face. Her eyes were fixed on the reflection in a way I couldn't read. I sat beside her. "You okay?" "I'm fine." "You don't have to lie to me." She looked at me through the mirror. When I was little, I used to imagine my wedding day. Dad walking me down the aisle, Mom sitting in the front row crying happy tears. I stayed quiet. Dad's gone now. Uncle Bao is walking me instead. That's okay. I'm used to replacements. Ling. But if Mom sits there today with the same expression she had at that dinner, she stopped. I don't want that to become part of my memory. I squeezed her hand. I'll talk to Mom. You already did. I'll do it again. I found Mom in the back room. She was wearing a dark crimson ao jai, carefully chosen because, as she'd explained, red should look joyful without being too bright. Mom. She turned around. Please don't say anything today that will hurt Ling. Mom looked at me calmly. Have I ever wanted my children to hurt? No, but you hurt people without realizing it. She went silent. Today is Ling's day. It's the life she chose. Whether you agree or not, she already chose it. Your only job today is to stand beside her and smile. You think I don't know that? I honestly don't know if you do. I just needed to say it. Mom turned back towards the mirror and adjusted her collar. You worry too much. I hope so.
The wedding hall was decorated in white and green. Fresh flowers everywhere. Chairs lined perfectly in rows. Guests gradually filling the room. I stood in the corner, wearing a pale blue bridesmaid dress, watching everything unfold. Hai stood at the end of the aisle in a black suit and white tie. He looked calm. Not the calmness of someone carefree, the calmness of someone who had already made a decision and no longer doubted it. His mother, Mrs. Twet, sat in the front row on the right in a golden yellow aozai, holding a handkerchief. My mother sat in the front row on the left in dark red, back straight, hands folded neatly on her lap. I looked at the two women and thought, these two are nothing alike. But they both love their children in their own ways. And today, those two kinds of love would have to learn to exist in the same room. The music began. The doors opened. Ling walked in on Uncle Bao's arm. And suddenly, something inside my chest broke open beautifully. She was breathtaking. Not because of the dress, not because of the makeup, but because of the way she walked, the way she held her head high, the way she looked straight ahead towards Hai, as though nothing else existed in the world. I looked at Mom. She was staring at Ling, and for one brief second I saw something rare on her face. Pure pride, without fear, without calculation. I exhaled in relief.
Okay, I thought. I was wrong. The ceremony went smoothly at first. The officiant gave a warm speech. Rings were brought out. Hai looked at Ling with a kind of sincerity that even I, someone naturally skeptical about romance, had to admit was real. Then came the family speeches. Hai's mother went first. She stood at the microphone with trembling hands and wished the couple a lifetime of happiness. She thanked Ling for choosing her son. Her voice cracked halfway through, and the guests applauded warmly. Then it was my mother's turn. She walked up to the microphone in her dark red aozai, posture straight, every movement composed, the image of a woman who had spent years standing in front of classrooms. She held the microphone, looked at Ling and Hai sitting at the front table. Ling, she began, her voice warm and clear. There are many things I want to say to you today. The room quieted. I want to tell you that I love you. I've worried about you since the day you were born. After your father passed away, I worried twice as much. I know you've carried many things silently. I know you've sacrificed more than you ever say out loud. I saw Ling soften slightly. I want to say that today I'm happy. Mum paused. 1 second, 2 seconds, and then, but I need you to know something. I know everything. The silence changed instantly. Not empty silence anymore. Heavy silence. The kind where the air itself shifts. I know Hai had another woman before you. I know why they broke up. And before it's too late, in front of everyone here, I want to ask you one thing. My chest stopped moving. Are you certain? The room froze. 500 guests staring at one another. Whispers beginning, like tiny cracks spreading through glass. Ling sat motionless. Hai slowly reached for her hand. My mother remained at the microphone, looking down at them, either unable or unwilling to realize what she had just done. I'm asking because I love you. Look me in the eye and tell me you're certain. Ling stood up, slowly, not dramatically, not angrily. She placed her napkin down on the table, looked at Hai, looked at Mum, looked around the room. Then she walked out.
I was the first person to run after her. She stood outside the hall in the corridor, leaning against the wall with her eyes closed. Her white wedding dress spread across the tiled floor like spilled light. "Lin!" "Don't say anything." I stopped immediately. Inside the hall, I could hear the whispers growing louder. Chairs scraping, footsteps moving, someone speaking quickly into a microphone. Then Kai's voice somewhere behind me, though I couldn't hear the words. Lin opened her eyes and stared up at the ceiling. "You know what's funny?" she said quietly. "What?" "The second Mom said, 'But I need you to know,' I already knew exactly what she was about to do." "You knew?" "I know, Mom." Her voice wasn't angry. That was the terrifying part. When she starts a sentence like that, it means she's been rehearsing it in her head for days. Her voice felt heavier than crying, heavier than anger. Exhaustion. "I'm so tired, Lan." "Lin." Not just today, 32 years tired. Tired of never being enough.
tired of constantly proving myself, tired of never being trusted. Kai stepped out into the hallway. He stopped in front of her. "Lynn." She looked at him. "I'm sorry," he said immediately. "I didn't know this would happen. It's not your fault. I know, but I'm still sorry, because I'm the reason she said those things." "No." Lynn shook her head. "Mom said those things because she's afraid, not because you did something wrong." Kai looked at her carefully. "What do we do now?" Lynn looked down at her hands. The engagement ring, the wedding ring she still hadn't put on. "I need 10 minutes. I'll wait." He stepped back immediately. No pressure, no pleading, just waiting. I turned and walked back into the hall. Mum was still standing near the stage, surrounded by relatives and guests, speaking all at once. Some people were trying to pull her aside, others staring openly. I walked up to her. She looked at me, and for the first time in my life, my mother looked small. "Mom," I whispered, "do you understand what you just did?" She didn't answer. "Please go talk to Lynn." Mom slowly looked around the room, at the guests, at the judgment in their faces, then finally back at me. I said the wrong thing. Not a question, not an excuse, the first true admission I had ever heard from her. "You need to tell Lynn that." My mother stepped into the hallway. Kai quietly moved farther away, standing near the end of the corridor with his back turned, giving them space. Mom stood in front of Lynn. The two of them looked at each other. "Mom," Lynn began. "No," Mom interrupted softly. "Let me speak first this time." Lynn stayed silent. "I'm sorry." The words sounded so unfamiliar coming from my mother that Lynn didn't react right away. "I was wrong," Mom continued. "I knew it the second the sentence left my mouth, but I couldn't stop myself. I'd been rehearsing those words in my head for days, and once I held the microphone, her voice started breaking apart. I lost control." Lynn stared at her. "Do you realize what that did to me?" Lynn finally asked, "in front of 500 people." "I know. You humiliated me. You humiliated Kai. You humiliated his family." "I know. You always say you love me, but the way you love me hurts me so much sometimes." Lynn's voice cracked for the first time. "I honestly can't remember the last time you trusted me, or the last time you weren't worried about me. I'm tired, Mum. I'm really tired." Mum didn't speak, and suddenly I saw something I had never seen before. She was listening, not waiting for her turn to talk, not preparing a defense, actually listening. "You know why I stopped telling you important things?" Lynn continued, calmer now, steadier. "Because every time I shared something, you never asked how I felt. You immediately tried to fix it, control it, turn it into your responsibility. I never meant to. I know, but you still did." Silence. Long, heavy silence. Mom slowly sat down on the small hallway chair against the wall, like someone who had suddenly realized how much weight she'd been carrying for years. Lynn looked at her, then slowly sat beside her, white wedding dress spreading across the floor between them. "Mom," Lynn said softly now, no anger left in her voice, only sadness. "Can I ask you something?" "What?" "The man who came to the house before the wedding, who was he to you?" Mom looked at her for a long time. "Why are you asking?" "Because Lan told me everything, and I want to understand you, not judge you, just understand why you became this way."
Mom stayed quiet for so long I thought she wouldn't answer. I stood a few feet away, barely breathing. Finally,
she spoke. His name was Min. I met him when I was 20. We studied at the same university. He majored in literature. I studied education. Lin listened without interrupting. We loved each other for 3 years. He was kind, very kind, but his family didn't like me. His grandmother said I wasn't worthy, said my family wasn't good enough. Mom paused. And he wasn't cruel, just afraid of standing against his family. So you left him. I gave him a choice. I told him, either you speak up for us or we end this. He asked for more time. I waited 6 months, then I walked away. Do you regret it? I don't regret leaving. Mom looked down at her hands. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd waited a little longer. Lin watched her quietly. You're scared I'm reliving your story. Not exactly. Mom shook her head slightly. I'm scared you'll end up carrying the same burdens I carried. Kai's grandmother is sick. His mother works endlessly. I'm afraid you'll take care of everyone until you disappear inside it. Mom, Lin gently took her hand. You're projecting your story onto mine. Kai is not the man you loved back then. He's not afraid? Of course he is. Everyone is afraid. But he's still here. He still came to talk to you. He still brought you documents. He still stood there while you questioned him over and over without walking away. Mom lowered her eyes. I know he's a good person. I know. I just don't know how to trust. And that's the most honest thing my mother had ever said in her life. I stood there listening and felt something inside my chest slowly soften. I just don't know how to trust. Then learn, Lin said gently. You don't have to be completely certain. You just have to trust enough to let me live my own life. I'm scared. I know, but your fear can't become the cage I live inside. Mom looked at her. Her eyes had turned red, a rare sight. I'm sorry, not just for today, for all the years before today too. Lin looked at her, then hugged her, right there in the hallway. White wedding dress, dark red ao jai. The two of them holding each other while the wedding waited on the other side of the doors. And for the first time all day, I felt like I could finally breathe again. Kai was still standing at the end of the hallway. Lin stood up, leaving Mother behind, and walked toward him. I stayed beside Mother. Are you okay, Mum? She nodded and used a handkerchief to wipe her eyes. Do I look terrible? No, you look like yourself. She turned to me. What does that mean? It means you're still you, even though you did something hurtful today. She let out a long sigh. I need to apologize to Kai. In a little while, let Lin talk to him first. At the far end of the hallway, Lin and Kai were talking. I couldn't hear what they were saying. I could only watch. He put a hand on her shoulder. She looked up at him. He said something. She nodded. He asked again. She nodded once more, this time more firmly. He smiled. She smiled. And I finally exhaled. Lin returned and stood beside Mother. Mum, I want to go ahead with the wedding. Mother looked at her. Are you sure? Lin held her gaze for a long moment. You asked me that just now. Then she smiled, gently, without a trace of sarcasm.
Mother laughed as well. It was the first genuine smile she had shown all day. "Let me apologize to Kai."
Mother walked into the reception hall first. The room was still crowded. Guests stood in small groups, whispering amongst themselves. When Mother entered, several people stopped talking and turned to look. She walked straight toward Kai. He was standing with his mother and two of his aunts. When he saw Mother approaching, he tensed slightly. "Kai," Mother began. The entire room fell silent. No one dared to breathe too loudly. "I'm sorry. I said things that should never have been said. Not because I think poorly of you, but because I was afraid and I didn't know how to control that fear." Kai looked at her. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do. I said those words in front of everyone, so I must apologize in front of everyone." Mrs. Twet, standing beside Kai, put her hand over her chest. "Oh, please," she said in her warm southern voice. "This is a happy day. Let's put it behind us. What matters is that the two children are happy." Mother looked at Mrs. Twet once, then again. Finally, she nodded. "Thank you." Mrs. Twet smiled, and it felt as though someone had opened a window and let fresh air into the room. Ling and Kai entered the reception hall together. The music began again. The band had been waiting, and now they played as if nothing had happened. Applause filled the room. Someone shouted, "Congratulations!" The entire hall erupted in laughter. I stood in the corner, still holding my untouched glass of orange juice, and watched Ling and Kai walk toward their table. Ling looked around the room, at the guests, at Mother standing beside the head table, and then at me. I raised my glass of orange juice. She burst into laughter. The officiant, one of Ling's friends, stepped up to the microphone with a smile he was clearly trying to suppress. "So, shall we continue?" The room responded with laughter and applause. "We've had a rather unusual ceremony, but I think that's a good sign. Every family has complicated moments. What matters most is how we move through them together." Kai picked up the ring. He looked at Ling. "I prepared these words 3 months ago, and I thought this would be the easiest wedding ceremony in history." He paused. "I was wrong." Laughter rippled through the room. "But I still want to place this ring on your finger. And I want to say this, not because I believe life will be easy, but because I know that when life becomes difficult, you are the person I want to face those difficulties with." He slipped the ring onto her finger. She placed the ring on his, and this time, when the applause erupted, no one remained still. The celebration continued until 11 o'clock that night. I finished my now warm glass of orange juice and switched to water. I ate 3 slices of wedding cake. I danced once with Lynn's friends. I dozed off for 15 minutes in the corner of the room, and no one noticed. Mother stayed at the head table all evening, talking with Mrs. Chwet. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I saw Mrs. Chwet laugh often, and Mother, at least twice, laughed with her. That was something I never expected to witness that day. At the end of the party, I stepped out onto the balcony alone. I stood there looking down at the street below. Traffic had thinned. The music from inside drifted out, hoarse and distant. "What are you doing out here by yourself?" I turned around.
Lynn was standing in the doorway, holding 2 glasses. She handed one to me. "I'm exhausted." "You're always exhausted at the end of a party." She stood beside me, and together we looked down at the street. "You did well today," she said. "I didn't do much." "You were here. That was the most important thing." I looked at her. The hem of her wedding dress was slightly wrinkled. A few strands of hair had come loose. Her makeup was still intact, but her eyes were tired. She had never looked more beautiful. Not when she walked down the aisle, but now, standing beside me, her hair undone, exhausted, still holding out a glass of water for her younger sibling. "Are you scared?" I asked. "Of what?" "What comes next? Your new life?" She thought for a moment. "Yes, but it's a different kind of fear from what I felt this morning." "How is it different?" "This morning I was afraid of things outside of me. Now I'm afraid of what's inside me." She smiled softly. "I'm afraid I won't be good enough, not patient enough, not mature enough." "You're all of those things." "How do you know?" "Because someone who isn't mature enough would never have stood in that hallway and said what you said to Mom." She looked at me. Then she smiled. "Since when did you become so sweet?" "I'm not being sweet. I'm telling the truth."
3 days after the wedding, Mother called me. "What are you doing?" "I'm writing." "Why?" "I want to talk." I went over to her house. She was sitting at the dining table with 2 cups of tea in front of her. "I already made your tea." "You knew I would come." "I guessed." I sat down and picked up my cup. "I want to tell you about the man from the other day," Mother began. I said nothing. "Mr. Min, he came that day because he was about to move abroad with his son. He wanted to see me one last time." "Did you talk to him?" "No, I told him to go." "Why?" She held her teacup and stared into it. "Because some things, once they are over, should not be pulled back into our lives. And because I knew that if I saw him again, I would start asking myself, what would have happened if? I don't want to live inside that question anymore." "How do you feel?" "I feel lighter a little." "Mum, there's something I've wanted to ask you for a long time." "What is it?" "I want to know if you're happy. Not happy because your children are doing well. Not happy because the house is in order. You, yourself, are you happy?" Mother did not answer right away. I watched her sit quietly with her cup of tea. Morning sunlight streamed through the window behind her. She looked tired. Not the kind of tired that comes from not getting enough sleep. The kind of tired that belongs to someone who has carried something heavy for too long. "I don't know how to tell the difference anymore," she said at last. "I've lived with worry for so long that I no longer know what I feel when I'm not worrying." "Then try not worrying." "I don't know how." "Learn." She looked at me. "You make it sound as easy as eating a meal." "Because it isn't that hard, Mum. The hardest part is simply beginning." In March of that year, Mother told me that Min had left. She moved to Australia with her son. "How do you know?" "He sent me a message before he left. It only said, 'I'm going now.
I wish you and your children good health." "Did you reply?" "Yes. What did you say?" She was silent for a moment. "I said, I wish you happiness. That was all." I looked at her. "Are you okay?" "I'm okay." She lifted her teacup. "Better than I thought I would be." I sat with Mother for a while. We did not talk. We simply sat together. Outside the window came the sounds of traffic, children playing somewhere in the distance, and birds singing in the neighbor's garden. "Lan," Mother said at last. "Yes." "Do you have someone in your life?" I looked at her, surprised by the sudden question. "No." "Why not?" "I haven't met the right person. Or perhaps you haven't given anyone a chance." I stared at her. "What are you saying?" "I'm asking. You analyze everything too much. You observe too much. Sometimes you keep watching without ever stepping in." I looked at her. "Are you describing me or yourself?" She paused. Then she laughed, not politely, not awkwardly, a real laugh. "You're right," she said. "I'm describing both of us." There were things in my family that were never spoken aloud. That my father died when Lynn was only 16, and instead of being allowed to grieve like a child, she had to learn how to stand firm because Mother was falling apart. That Mother cried every night for 6 months after Father died, but always waited until Lynn and I were asleep. That I knew the sound of those tears because I often woke in the middle of the night and listened. That Lynn knew that sound too because she also lay awake and listened, and yet we never spoke of it. Some things remain unspoken because people have no language for them, not because they do not want to speak, but because sometimes pain is larger than language itself. Mother loved Father, then she lost him, and afterwards she learned to control everything around her because it was the only way she knew to keep herself from collapsing completely. And in the process, she unintentionally tried to control the people she loved most, not out of cruelty, but because that was how she survived. The difference between those who understand this and those who do not is simple. Those who understand can feel anger and forgiveness at the same time. Lynn understands. I understand. And slowly, very slowly and with great difficulty, Mother is beginning to understand herself as well.
6 months after the wedding, Lynn called me. "Lan, what is it?" There was something different in her voice. Not anxiety, not sadness, something lighter. "I'm pregnant." I sat up straight. "Lynn, I'm 6 weeks along. I only found out yesterday. I just told Mum." "How did she react?" "Mum," Lynn's voice caught. "She cried." I said nothing. "She held my hand and cried. She didn't say a word. She just sat there and cried." "She's happy." "She is." Lynn began crying too, but these were the tears of someone who had finally loosened something that had been tied too tightly for too long. "Lan, I think for the first time in many years, Mum isn't worrying. She's simply happy." After the call, I sat alone. I looked out the window. The late afternoon sunlight filled the room. I thought about Mother holding Lynn's hand and weeping. I thought about the hallway on the wedding day, 2 women sitting on the floor, one in a white dress, the other in a red auzai. I thought about everything that had to happen for this moment to become possible. And I realized something. Mother's words on the wedding day, the words that brought the ceremony to a halt, were not the end of anything. They were the beginning.
the moment when everything stopped long enough for people to look into one another's eyes and say what needed to be said. The moment when Mother truly listened for the first time, the moment when Lynn truly spoke for the first time, the moment when a family, imperfect, full of cracks, and burdened by all the things that had never been said, began to learn how to remain together in a more honest way. It has now been 1 year since the wedding. I am sitting in a coffee shop near my home, writing these words. My nephew, the son of Lynn and Hai, is now 4 months old, a baby boy. His name is Min, not because he was named after anyone in particular. Lynn simply liked the name. Mother goes to Lynn's house twice a week. Not to check on things, she goes to hold her grandson. The first time I saw Mother holding him, I stood in the doorway for a while without going in. She was sitting in a chair with the baby in her arms, softly singing a song I did not recognize. She sang so quietly that I had to lean in to hear her. Her voice was not especially beautiful, but it was the warmest voice I had ever heard her use. I stood at the door and thought, this is my mother. Not the woman who stood at a microphone and said the words that brought the wedding to a halt. Not the woman who called Thang to ask about Hai's former girlfriend. Not the woman who stood behind a door and watched the man she loved walk away without calling him back. But the woman sitting in a chair, singing softly, holding her 4-month-old grandson. Mrs. Twet came to visit the baby last week. I was there. I watched Mrs. Twet and Mother sitting together in the living room, arguing over the proper way to prepare formula. How cool should the milk be? You test it on your wrist, it should feel warm. I used to do that and my son often had gas. That was because he drank too much, not because of the temperature. Do you really think so? Neither woman gave in, but neither became angry. They were simply two grandmothers debating over the best way to care for a child. Hai stood beside me, watching the scene. I never thought this day would come, he said quietly. Neither did I. What do you think of the wedding now? I thought for a moment. I think it was necessary. That sounds strange. It is strange. But if Mother never said those words that day, perhaps all the things that needed to be spoken would never have been spoken, and everyone would have continued living side by side without ever truly seeing one another. Hai looked at me. You think deeply. I'm a writer. He laughed.
I did not write this story because I believe my family is extraordinary. I wrote it because I believe my family is very ordinary. Many families have a mother whose fear hides behind control. Many families have a child who grows up carrying words that were never spoken. Many families share meals so quiet that the only sound is chopsticks touching bowls. Many families are filled with people who love one another but do not know how to say so. And many families need a moment in which everything stops. It does not have to be a wedding interrupted. It may be a phone call at 3 in the morning. It may be an unexpected meeting in the kitchen, 2 people standing beneath yellow light, and one of them deciding to tell the truth. What I want to say is this. Those moments of interruption are necessary, even when they arrive in embarrassing ways, in painful ways, in ways that make you wish the ground would open beneath you. Because when everything stops, people finally have a chance to see one another. Last week, I stopped by Mother's house. She was watering the plants in the small garden in front of her home. The blue plastic watering can was the same one I remembered from childhood. "Will you stay for dinner?" she asked. "Yes." I'd just made sour soup. I sat on the front steps and watched her water the plants. She watered each one carefully, without rushing. "Mum," I called. "Yes?" "Have you learned how not to worry?" She stopped and looked back at me over her shoulder. Then she smiled, the kind of smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes, a smile I had rarely seen. "Not yet," she said, "but I'm practicing." "Have you made any progress?" "I've learned that sometimes if I stop worrying, I don't die." I laughed. "That's step one." "Yes," she said, turning back to the garden. "Step one." I sat on the steps, watching Mother water her plants in the golden light of late afternoon, and I thought, perhaps this was the most ordinary and most beautiful thing I had seen in a very long time. Not the wedding day with its flowers and loud music, not the moment Kai placed the ring on Ling's finger, not the applause when the ceremony resumed, but my mother watering her plants, smiling with the corners of her eyes and saying, "I'm practicing."
I often wonder, if Mother had not said those words on the wedding day, what would have happened? Perhaps the wedding would have gone smoothly. Ling and Hai would have returned to their new home and begun their new life together. Mother would have continued worrying in silence, and the things that needed to be spoken would never have been spoken. And perhaps, after a few years, Ling would have realized that she could no longer live under the shadow of that worry. And when the fracture finally came, it would have been deeper and far more difficult to heal. Or perhaps not. Perhaps everything would have turned out fine in its own way. I do not know. No one ever knows the path that was not taken. What I do know is this: the path that was taken, though no one chose it consciously, led us to things I never expected. To Ling sitting down on the hallway floor and speaking the words that had long needed to be said. To Mother truly listening. To Kai standing at the end of the hallway and waiting. To Mrs. Tuyet and Mother debating over the proper way to prepare formula for their grandson. To Mother sitting with her grandson in her arms, singing softly. To all the small, ordinary, unremarkable moments that are, in fact, the very things that make life worth living. 3 seconds. That is all it took for a wedding to come to a halt. But it took a year, and will take many more years after that, to understand that the moment of interruption was not an ending. It was the moment when everything truly began. People often say that words are like knives. A single careless sentence can sever something important. That is true. But there is something people mention less often. Sometimes the wound becomes an opening, a place where light can enter, a place where the things that have been trapped inside for too long finally find a way out. My mother said the wrong thing. Those words stopped a wedding. And because the wedding stopped, we were given the chance to truly look at one another for the first time, honestly. I do not say this to excuse what Mother said. Nothing excuses hurting another person, whether intentionally or unintentionally. But I do say this: even from mistakes, something good can grow if people are brave enough to sit down together afterward and choose not to walk away. Lin did not walk away. Kai did not walk away. Mother
did not walk away. And so the story continued, not perfectly, still full of difficult moments, evenings when someone says the wrong thing, and sleepless nights spent thinking about what remains unresolved. But it continued, and I believe that that may be the only thing a family truly needs to do. Continue. Not perfectly, simply continue. Lan, 27 years old, still oversleeps on Monday mornings, still does not have a boyfriend, still writes about the things families never say aloud. Family is not a place where people are perfect. Family is a place where people choose to stay, no matter what.
Thank you for watching the video. Please subscribe to the channel, like, comments, and share. See you again!